Imagine living in a world without fire. No campfires, no cooked meals, and no warmth during freezing nights. For our ancestors, survival was much harder than we can imagine. There were no campfires to gather around. Nights were dark, cold, and frightening. People had to rely entirely on nature. Without fire, there was no cooked food. Early humans ate most of their meals raw, making them much harder to chew and digest. Cold nights could be unbearable. Without any source of warmth, surviving winter was a constant challenge. Hungry predators roamed the darkness. Early humans had very little protection against these dangerous animals. Yet somehow, everything would eventually change. One discovery would completely transform human history. That discovery was fire. But how did humans discover fire in the first place? To answer that question, we need to travel back in time. Back to a world that existed long before modern civilization. There were no cities anywhere on Earth. There were no farms or villages either. Nature ruled the world completely. Early humans lived in a dangerous environment filled with uncertainty. Every single day was a struggle for survival. Finding enough food was never easy. Predators were everywhere, always searching for their next meal. And nights were especially terrifying. Without fire, darkness dominated the world. The world our ancestors knew was very different from ours. There were no flashlights to guide them through the night. There were no heaters to keep them warm. And of course, there were no kitchens. Most food had to be eaten raw. Raw food was much tougher to chew and digest. Life was difficult in countless ways, but nature itself held an incredible secret. Because fire had existed long before humans appeared, long before our ancestors walked the earth. Natural events were already producing flames. Lightning strikes could start enormous wildfires. These powerful events may have been one of humanity's first encounters with fire. Volcanoes could also unleash rivers of burning lava. Nature itself was already producing fire long before humans learned to control it. Even dry forests could suddenly burst into flames under the right conditions. Fire was a natural part of Earth's history. Our ancestors probably witnessed these terrifying events many times. Seeing such power must have been both frightening and fascinating. At first, humans were likely terrified by fire. They had never seen anything quite like it before. The flames were unpredictable and dangerous. Getting too close could mean serious injury. The heat coming from the fire was intense. It was unlike anything early humans had experienced. Despite the danger, there was something strangely beautiful about fire. It captured human curiosity. Instead of avoiding it forever, some brave individuals may have watched from a safe distance. Curiosity is one of humanity's greatest strengths. Slowly, they began to learn from what they observed. Knowledge often starts with simple curiosity. They noticed that predators seemed afraid of flames. Dangerous animals preferred to stay away. They also discovered that animals caught in wildfires tasted different. In fact, they tasted better. Cooked meat was softer and easier to eat. This accidental discovery may have changed human history. Fire also provided warmth during cold nights. For the first time, people could fight back against freezing temperatures. Little by little, humans realized that fire was not just dangerous. It could also be useful. Fire was both a friend and an enemy. Learning how to use it would take thousands of years. Humans started thinking about ways to benefit from fire. Their creativity pushed them forward. Knowledge about fire was probably shared among families and tribes. Cooperation helped everyone survive. But there was one major problem. Natural fires eventually died out. Without a source of flames, people would have to wait for another lightning strike. That could take a very long time. So instead of creating fire, humans first learned how to preserve it. This was an important step forward. Burning branches from wildfires may have been carried back to camps. Keeping them alive became extremely important. People carefully protected these precious flames. Fire had become too valuable to lose. They constantly added sticks and dry wood to keep the fire burning. It required attention day and night. Entire communities depended on these flames. Losing them could mean disaster. Some people may have even slept beside the fire. Guarding it became a shared responsibility. Generation after generation, humans learned better ways to maintain fire. Experience slowly improved their skills. Keeping the fire alive became a symbol of survival. It brought people together. Families gathered around the campfire every evening. It became the center of their communities. And for the first time in history, humans could relax and share stories long after the sun had disappeared. Life around the campfire changed everything. People were no longer just surviving, they were beginning to thrive. For the first time, humans could cook their food instead of eating everything raw. This simple change had enormous consequences. Cooked meat tasted better and was much easier to eat. Meals became more enjoyable and nutritious. Soft food required less effort to chew. That meant the body could spend more energy elsewhere. Humans were now able to absorb more calories from the same amount of food. This gave them an important advantage. Warm fires also made sleeping at night much more comfortable. Cold temperatures became less of a threat. Predators were less likely to attack camps protected by flames. People finally felt safer. With greater safety came better rest. Better rest helped people stay healthier and stronger. Campfires allowed humans to remain active even after sunset. Their day no longer ended when the sun disappeared. People gathered together at night more often. These moments strengthened social bonds. Stories, experiences, and knowledge could now be shared around the fire. Communication became increasingly important. Families spent more time together. Communities became stronger and more organized. Slowly, life became easier than it had ever been before. Fire was changing everything. Humans grew healthier and stronger thanks to improved nutrition and protection. Some scientists believe that cooked food even helped our brains develop. More energy became available for brain growth. Over many generations, larger brains meant greater intelligence. Humans became better problem solvers, and that intelligence would lead to even greater discoveries. Fire had opened the door to progress. Eventually, preserving fire was no longer enough. Humans wanted complete control over it. Waiting for lightning strikes was unreliable. There had to be another way. So our ancestors began experimenting. They tested different materials and techniques. Many attempts probably failed. But failure has always been part of learning. People kept trying again and again. Persistence was the key. One day they noticed that rubbing certain sticks together produced heat. This discovery was revolutionary. Small amounts of smoke began to appear. They were getting closer to success. Eventually, tiny sparks and glowing embers appeared. Humans were learning how to create fire themselves. This achievement was one of the greatest breakthroughs in history. Humanity no longer depended entirely on nature. Knowledge about making fire spread from one generation to the next. Skills were passed down through teaching. Children learned from parents and elders. Fire became part of everyday life. People also discovered that striking certain stones together created sparks. New methods made fire easier to produce. At last, humans had mastered one of nature's most powerful forces, and the world would never be the same again. Once humans learned how to create fire, their possibilities expanded dramatically. A new chapter in history had begun. With fire under their control, people could travel into colder regions. Places that were once impossible to survive in became new homes. Even freezing winters became easier to endure. Fire provided warmth wherever humans went. Communities continued to grow larger and stronger. Survival was becoming easier than ever before. Groups of hunters worked together more effectively. Cooperation became one of humanity's greatest strengths. Cooking food and sharing meals brought people closer together. Society itself was evolving. Villages slowly began to appear. Humans were no longer constantly wandering. Over time, people started experimenting with clay. They discovered that fire could transform soft mud into hard pottery. Simple pots and containers made everyday life much easier. Food and water could now be stored for later use. Fire was no longer just about survival, it was becoming a tool for innovation. Then came another incredible discovery. Heat could also transform certain rocks and metals. Humans learned how to melt and shape metal. Stronger tools changed everything. Metal axes, knives, and farming equipment improved daily life. Civilization advanced even faster. As centuries passed, more inventions appeared. Fire continued to drive progress. Ancient cities rose across the world. Great civilizations began to flourish. Kingdoms and empires expanded. Human societies became increasingly complex. Blacksmiths mastered the art of working with fire. Their skills helped shape history. Eventually, the Industrial Revolution arrived, and once again, fire played a central role. Steam engines powered factories, ships, and trains. The world was changing faster than ever. Machines transformed the way people lived and worked. Humanity entered a new age. Modern cities filled with lights began to appear. Civilization had reached incredible heights. Electricity brought even greater changes. Nights were no longer ruled by darkness. Technology continued to evolve at an astonishing pace. New inventions appeared one after another. Computers revolutionized communication and knowledge. The digital age had arrived. Smartphones placed the power of information into our hands, something unimaginable to our ancestors. Today we are surrounded by technology everywhere we look. Yet it all began with something surprisingly simple. Without fire, none of this would have been possible. Civilization itself depended on that first discovery. Every meal you eat and every light you switch on are connected to humanity's relationship with fire. Even the device you're using right now can trace its history back to a single breakthrough. And perhaps the most incredible part is that we may never know who first discovered fire. Their names have been lost to time, but their achievement changed the destiny of our species forever. In many ways, modern civilization began with a single flame, and that simple flame changed everything.